Good evening, all, and welcome back to Untold Fears. Tonight, we journey deep into the oldest mountains in North America, where 10 individuals stepped onto trails marked on maps, only to discover that the Appalachian wilderness operates by laws far older and darker than any cartographer could document. These are not campfire tales passed down through generations. These are first-hand accounts from hikers, campers, and searchers who found themselves face-to-face with forces that do not belong in any survival manual. Some walked away forever changed, others never walked away at all. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe to Untold Fears for daily true horror content that will keep you up at night. Hit that notification bell so you never miss when the darkness calls. Now, let us step into the shadows of the Appalachian deep woods, where civilization ends and terror begins. I am writing this so I do not forget the order of things, and so someone else can recognize the signs if they ever find the same ground. My name is McKenna. I grew up in Asheville, North Carolina, where the Blue Ridge Mountains meet the edge of civilization and the air smells like rain even on clear days. My older brother disappeared on a camping trip in the Great Smoky Mountains when I was 16. He was 22, a graduate student studying ecology, someone who knew those trails better than he knew the streets of our hometown. His last text was a photo of a trail marker near Cades Cove, taken at 3:47 in the afternoon on September 12th. The timestamp is burned into my memory. After that, nothing. No calls, no messages, no trace of him beyond boot prints that ended abruptly near Abrams Creek as if he had simply evaporated into the mountain air. Every October, I come back to the Great Smoky Mountains. I tell people it is for closure, but that is not quite honest. It is closer to inventory. I walk the same trails he walked. I check the pullouts where his car might have been parked. I read the bulletin boards at ranger stations looking for missing person flyers that might tell me something the official investigation did not. The forest has a public record if you know what to look for. Trees grow at predictable rates. Erosion follows patterns. Trail markers fade in specific ways. And sometimes, if you pay close enough attention, you find things that do not belong in the pattern at all. This year, my friends asked me not to spend my brother's birthday alone. They meant well. They always mean well. We planned a simple camping trip, nothing ambitious, just 2 nights at a dispersed site just off Abrams Falls Trail. The area is popular enough to feel safe, but remote enough to offer the kind of silence I need when I'm thinking about him. The group was small and carefully chosen. Olivia, who makes jokes out of everything and has a laugh that sounds like wind chimes. Kaylin, a paramedic who carries more medical gear than some ambulances and has a way of staying calm when everyone else is losing their composure. Davian, quiet and reliable, the kind of person who notices when someone needs space and respects it without question. And Janessa, who brought a ukulele and swore the trip would heal us all, though I am not sure any of us believed her. We set up camp on Friday afternoon under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. The tents went up fast. Davian rigged a bear bag with the efficiency of someone who has done it 100 times. Kaylin laid out her medical kit and checked that everyone had working headlamps. Olivia collected firewood and stacked it in a neat pyramid. Janessa strummed her ukulele and sang something I did not recognize, but that felt appropriate for the setting. Everything was exactly as it should be. Normal. Safe. The kind of camping trip people take every weekend across these mountains without incident. We cooked dinner over a small fire, ate from tin plates, and talked about nothing important. Olivia told a story about a disastrous first date. Kaylin shared a call she had responded to where a man had glued his hand to a bowling ball. Davian listened and smiled in all the right places. Janessa played 3 more songs, and we sang along poorly. By 10 p.m., we were all in our tents, the fire reduced to embers, the forest settling into its nighttime rhythms. I lay in my sleeping bag and listened to the creek running somewhere to the west. The sound was soothing. I felt myself beginning to relax for the first time in weeks. Just after midnight, I heard scraping beneath my tent floor. At first, I thought it was a root shifting under my weight, or maybe an animal burrowing nearby. But the sound was too deliberate, too rhythmic. Scrape, pause, scrape, pause. I sat up and pressed my palm flat against the tent floor. Something pressed back. The nylon bowed inward, like someone had reached up from below and made a fist. I yanked my hand away and scrambled out of my sleeping bag. My heart was pounding hard enough to hurt. I unzipped the tent and stepped outside. Davian was already awake, standing near the fire pit with his headlamp on. Kaylin emerged from her tent a moment later, followed by Olivia and Janessa. No one had to ask what was wrong. We had all heard it. We dragged my tent to the side, stakes pulling free from the earth with soft popping sounds. Underneath, the ground was wrong. The soil was loose and dark, recently disturbed. It did not match the compacted dirt around it. Davian knelt down and started digging with both hands. He moved fast, scooping soil aside in big handfuls. 10 inches down, he hit something solid. Fingers. Human fingers, curled and pale. Kaylin took over. She has training for this kind of thing. She cleared the soil carefully, checking for a pulse, for signs of breathing, for any indication of how long the person had been buried. We pulled out a woman, face turned into a pocket of air that had kept her alive. Her skin was cold. Her lips were blue. Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused, like someone waking from a dream they could not shake. Kaylin wrapped her in a sleeping bag and checked her vitals. Weak pulse, shallow breathing, hypothermia setting in. The woman looked at us and spoke. Her voice was a whisper, hoarse and cracked. She said 6 words that made my blood turn to ice. If they know I am alive, they will come back. We built the fire back up and kept her close to the heat. Kaylin worked on her while the rest of us stood guard. No one said what we were all thinking, which was that someone had buried this woman alive and might still be nearby. Davian pulled out his phone. No signal. We were too deep in the valley. He said he would hike to higher ground and try to call for help. I told him not to go alone. Olivia volunteered to go with him. They left at 1:15 a.m., headlamps cutting narrow beams through the darkness. While they were gone, I checked. The campsite. Our food bags had been cut down from the bear hang and slashed open. Not torn the way an animal would tear them, but cut with a blade. Clean lines through nylon. Protein bars were missing. Dried fruit was left in the dirt, untouched. Granola was scattered across the ground. Whoever had done this had been selective. They had taken high-calorie, portable food and left everything else. That told me they were planning to be mobile. It told me they knew what they were doing. Kaylin asked the woman what happened. The woman said she had been hiking alone 2 days earlier. She had parked at the Cades Cove pullout and started the Abrams Falls Trail around noon. About 3 miles in, she met 2 men coming the other way. They were friendly. They asked where she was headed. They said they had seen a black bear near the falls and warned her to be careful. She thanked them and kept walking. She did not see them again until it was too late. They had circled around and come at her from behind. One grabbed her arms. The other put a cloth over her mouth. She remembered the smell, sweet and chemical. Then nothing until she woke up in the dark. Dirt pressing against her face, the weight of earth on her chest. I found rope loops hanging from low branches about 50 yards from our campsite. 5 of them, evenly spaced, tied with the same quick-release knot. No wind moved them. They hung perfectly still, like ornaments on a tree. I walked closer and saw that the ground beneath each loop had been cleared of leaves and debris. Smooth circles of bare earth, each about 3 feet across. I did not touch the ropes. I did not need to touch them to understand what they were for. At 1:45 a.m., a single sharp whistle sounded from uphill. It was not a bird. It was too clean, too deliberate. 10 seconds later, another whistle answered from below us, somewhere near the creek. 7 seconds after that, a third came from the west, past the tree line. They were communicating, they were coordinating, and they knew exactly where we were. I ran back to the fire and told Kaylin what I had found. She said we needed to leave immediately. I agreed. We woke Janessa and started packing. We left the tents, we left the gear. We took the woman, the medical kit, and our headlamps. We moved as fast as we could without running. The woman could barely walk. Kaylin and I supported her on either side, her arms over our shoulders, her feet dragging. We found Davian and Olivia halfway up the ridge. They had heard the whistles too. Davian had gotten through to 911. He gave them our coordinates and said we had an injured hiker and possible assailants in the area. The dispatcher said a team would be mobilized, but it would take at least 2 hours to reach us. Davian said we were not waiting. We kept moving. As we climbed, I found 3 shallow depressions under the moss behind a laurel thicket. They were body-sized, less than 3 feet deep. Rough rectangles carved into the earth. Fresh leaves had been layered on the bottom, soft bedding to keep the soil from compacting too quickly. These were not old. These had been dug recently, maybe that same night. And they were waiting for occupants. We reached a logging road at 3:20 a.m. Davian said the main highway was another mile east. We walked in silence, listening for footsteps behind us, for whistles, for any sign we were being followed. The woman kept looking back over her shoulder. She said they had told her she was the 4th. She said there had been others before her, and there would be others after. She said they called it a rotation. I did not ask her to explain. I did not want to know. Half a mile from the highway, we found an arrangement of timber boards nailed across shallow pits. Some had stones stacked on them to add weight. A few were staked through with rebar, driven deep into the ground. I put my ear to the nearest board and heard something scrape from below. Not a voice, not a cry for help, just the steady scratch of nails on wood, rhythmic and desperate. I stood up and looked at Kaylin. She looked at Davian. None of us said anything. We knew what we had to do. Davian and I pulled the stones off one of the boards. We pried the nails out with a flat rock. The board came free and we dragged it aside. The pit was deeper than I expected, maybe 6 feet down. At the bottom was a man, filthy and gaunt, his fingernails worn to bloody nubs. He looked up at us and did not speak. He just climbed. Kaylin reached down and helped pull him out. We did the same for 2 more, a woman in her 30s, a man who could not have been older than 25, all of them silent, all of them moving like people who had accepted they were already dead and were surprised to find themselves still breathing. That was when they came. 5 shapes moved out of the understory wearing canvas jackets and burlap masks. They carried shovels, rope, a post hole digger, tools for digging, tools for burying. They did not run. They walked toward us with the steady pace of people who had done this before and knew how it ended. I poured camp fuel across 2 of the closed lids and lit it with my lighter. The flames climbed fast, orange and hungry. The masked figures stopped. 2 of them tried to stamp out the fire. The rest kept coming. We fought. Not with skill or training, just with panic and the primal understanding that we were fighting for our lives. Olivia swung a branch and connected with someone's shoulder. Davian tackled one of them and they rolled across the ground. Kaylin sprayed bear mace into the face of a man who got too close. I do not remember all of it. I remember the smell of burning wood and fuel. I remember the sound of someone screaming, maybe me, maybe someone else. I remember the moment we broke through their line and ran. We reached Highway 441 after sunrise. A deputy was already there, waiting. Someone in a passing car had seen the fire and called it in. We collapsed on the pavement, all of us, 8 people who should not have survived the night. The deputy listened to our story and asked how much we had had to drink. I wanted to hit him. Kaylin showed him the woman we had pulled from the ground. She showed him the 3 others. He stopped asking questions. A search team went out. They found old digs and recent soil disturbance, but rain moved in that afternoon and flattened the scene. The woman we pulled out gave a statement through tears and shaking hands. She remembered being picked up near a highway turnout 2 nights before. She remembered the smell of cold dirt and fuel. She remembered thinking she was going to die and being surprised every time she woke up and found she had not. The 3 others we freed gave similar accounts. All of them had been hiking alone. All of them had met friendly strangers on the trail. All of them had woken up in the dark. I went back to my mother's house 3 days later and sat with my brother's jacket on my lap. The fabric still smelled like him, like pine sap and old canvas. I kept wondering why high-calorie bars were taken from our food bag while fruit was left to rot in the dirt. Systems reveal themselves in what they ignore. They were selecting supplies that would keep them mobile and operational for days without resupply. They were planning for duration, not comfort. These were not opportunistic criminals. These were people who had refined a process over time. I used to think the worst thing that could happen in these mountains was getting lost. I have changed my mind. The worst thing is being found by the wrong people. This is the ending I can live with. We got her out. We got 3 others out. Kaylin and Davian healed from their cuts and bruises. Olivia still makes jokes, but they are quieter now. Janessa left her ukulele in the mountains and has not bought a new one. I filed everything I could with people who have to write things down, who have to keep records, who might one day connect this case to others. If you hike the Smokies and you see tidy lines where the ground should not be tidy, or you find rope loops where there is no reason for rope, or you smell fuel where there is no lantern, leave. If you hear a single whistle and then another and then a third from a new direction, do not wait to see who is comfortable enough to stand in the open and signal to their partners. Get to a road. Call it in anyway. Some people have turned isolation into opportunity, and the mountains keep their secrets until someone forces them into the light. My name is Kiana. I live in Boone, North Carolina, a few hours from Linville Gorge Wilderness, which people call the Grand Canyon of the East, though it is deeper and wilder than that name suggests. During the pandemic years, I adopted a hound mix named Scout from a shelter that was overcrowded and understaffed. She was 3 years old, skinny, with scars on her back legs that the shelter could not explain. For the first 6 months, she treated me like a stranger. She would eat from my hand, but flinch when I reached to pet her. She would sleep in the same room, but never on the bed. She would follow me from room to room, but always kept 5 feet of distance between us. When restrictions eased and I started hiking again, I thought bringing her along might help. Dogs are supposed to bond through shared experiences, or at least that is what the training videos on the internet said. On my next visit to the gorge, I offered to take her out alone and do the simplest thing you can do with a nervous dog. Keep the route familiar, keep the commands consistent, and finish before dark. Nothing complicated. Nothing that would push either of us too far. We chose the Babel Tower Trail that runs along the eastern rim of Linville Gorge. The trail is 4 miles out and back, well marked, with views of the canyon that make you understand why people drive hours to see it. The plan was basic. Let her off the lead in open stretches where I could see her clearly. Call her back often to reinforce the command. Clip the lead before we reached the trailhead again. I had done this route a dozen times before. I knew every switchback, every overlook, every place where the trail narrowed and required attention. We started at 2 p.m. on a Thursday in late September. The parking lot held 3 other cars. The weather was perfect, temperature in the low 60s, sky clear, visibility unlimited. Scout stayed close at first, nose to the ground, tail low but not tucked. I let her off the lead after the first quarter mile. She moved ahead cautiously, checking back every few seconds to make sure I was still there. I called her name in a steady tone, the same way every time, no variation in pitch or volume. She responded well. By the second mile, she was ranging 30 feet ahead, sniffing rocks and tree roots, acting more like a normal dog than I'd ever seen her. The trail opened onto a rocky overlook with a view straight down into the gorge, The cliffs dropped 2,000 feet to the river below. I stopped to take a photo. Scout sat beside me, panting, looking more relaxed than she had in months. I felt something close to peace. For 10 minutes, everything was exactly as it should be. About 200 yards from the trailhead, on the way back, I called Scout in to clip the lead. She came straight away, head low, moving with the obedience of a dog that understands routine. I crouched, got the clip lined up with her collar, and heard a noise in the trees to my right. Not a scurry or a rustle. A single measured shift of weight on ground, deliberate and heavy. Scout stiffened. Her ears went flat. Then from the same patch of trees came my voice calling her name, the same way I had said it for the past hour. The pitch, the rhythm, the slight pause I put in before the last syllable. I could have been listening to a phone recording of myself. I froze. My hand was still on Scout's collar. I looked toward the trees but saw nothing. Dense laurel and rhododendron formed a wall of green 20 feet off the trail. I said, "Who is there?" in a firm voice, trying to sound more confident than I felt. No reply, just the sound of wind moving through leaves and the distant rush of water in the gorge below. Closer than before, the same voice called Scout's name again, identical to mine. Not similar, not close, exact. Whoever was there had listened carefully enough to copy not just the word, but the way I had been saying it all afternoon, the small personal inflections that make a voice recognizable. Scout lunged toward the sound, not barking, just pulling like a dog that hears its owner calling. I tightened my grip on her collar and clipped the lead with shaking hands. I stood up and scanned the tree line. Nothing moved, no branches swaying, no footsteps, no sign that anyone was there at all. I started walking back toward the trailhead, pulling Scout along beside me. She resisted, turning her head back toward the trees, whining low in her throat. I heard a branch break off ahead to my left, one clean report like a heavy foot on dead wood. The sound came from a different direction than the voice. I stopped walking. Scout stopped whining. The third call came from behind me on the path I had just walked. My voice, calling Scout's name, coming from the trail itself, as if I were standing 30 feet back watching myself. I had not heard anyone pass us. I had not heard footsteps, or breathing, or the scrape of boots on stone. The trail behind me was empty. Scout whined again and tried to pull backward toward the sound, straining against the lead so hard I thought her collar might snap. I picked Scout up. She's not a small dog, 50 pounds of muscle and bone, but adrenaline made her feel weightless. I got my arms under her chest and ran the last stretch with my head forward, the lead dragging against my legs. The road showed through the trees. I kept running until my feet hit pavement. I stood there and scanned the tree line, breathing hard, heart hammering. Nothing moved. The forest was perfectly still. I put Scout in the car and locked the doors. I sat in the driver's seat for 5 minutes watching the trailhead, waiting for someone to emerge. No one did. The 3 other cars I had seen when I arrived were gone. The parking lot was empty except for mine. I started the engine and drove back to Boone with my hands tight on the wheel and my eyes checking the rearview mirror every few seconds. I told my roommate what happened when I got home. She listened without interrupting, which is one of the reasons we have lived together for 3 years. When I finished, she said I was not the first person to say they had heard something off in Linville at dusk. Over the years, people had talked about strange callers in the gorge. Never in a crowd, always when it was quiet. She reminded me of a hiker who had lost a dog up there about 5 years ago. The hiker had posted on every local forum, put up flyers, offered a reward. They searched for days. No collar turned up, no body, no sign of the animal at all. The hiker kept going back for months, calling the dog's name from the trailhead, hoping it would come back. Eventually they stopped. That night, Scout slept in my room for the first time. She climbed onto the bed without being invited and pressed herself against my side. I did not hear anything through the windows. No voices, no calls, just the normal sounds of a town settling into sleep. But I did not sleep well. I kept thinking about the way my voice had sounded coming from the trees, the precision of it, the wrongness of hearing yourself speak when your mouth is closed. The next day, I called the Forest Service and logged what I had experienced. The person on the phone was polite and professional. She took my name and the date and the location. She said there had been other reports over the years of unusual sounds in Linville Gorge, though she did not specify what kind. She told me to avoid the area after dark and to hike with a partner when possible. She thanked me for reporting it and said the information would be filed. I got the sense that filed meant forgotten, but I appreciated the gesture anyway. I went back to the internet and searched for stories about Linville Gorge. I found accounts going back 20 years. Hikers hearing their names called by voices they recognized. Campers waking to conversations outside their tents that sounded like their own voices speaking to each other. A man who said he heard his dead wife calling him from the canyon and had to be physically restrained from walking off the trail toward the edge. Most of the accounts were dismissed as echo effects or auditory pareidolia, the brain finding patterns in random noise. But I know what I heard. It was not random. It was not an echo. It was my voice, precise and intentional, calling my dog from 3 different locations in the span of 2 minutes. Scout has not been the same since. She will not go near my hiking gear. If I pull out my boots or my backpack, she leaves the room. She sleeps on my bed every night now, pressed against me like she's afraid I will disappear if she does not maintain contact. She startles at sounds she used to ignore. She watches the windows after dark. Whatever happened on that trail changed something in her, the same way it changed something in me. I am writing this because I would tell anyone walking Linville Gorge in late afternoon to keep their dog close and get back to the road before the light goes. You do not have to prove anything to anyone. You do not have to investigate strange sounds or verify what you think you heard. You just have to get home. Some places have ways of keeping what wanders too far in, and the gorge is deeper than any map suggests. Not just in elevation, but in the things it holds that do not show up on surveys or satellite images. I will not be going back. Scout will not be going back. And if you hear your own voice calling to you from the trees, my advice is simple. Do not answer. Do not follow. Just run. I am writing this because I need to put the pattern down before I forget the details. My name is Kaladin. I go into the Roan Highlands when I need a reset, when the noise of daily life builds to a level I cannot process anymore. I live in Johnson City, Tennessee, and make the drive in an hour if traffic cooperates. I have hiked there enough to know the balds and how quickly the weather flips on the ridge. The place has rules you learn by paying attention. Carry extra layers even when the forecast looks perfect. Watch the fog because it moves faster than you think. Plan on having fewer people around than you expect, especially on weekdays. The Roan Highlands sit on the Tennessee-North Carolina border at elevations above 6,000 feet, and the exposed grassy balds make you feel like you are standing on top of the world with nothing between you and the sky. I started from Carver's Gap early on a Friday in late September to avoid weekend crowds. The rhododendron tunnels were already turning bronze, and the air had that sharp, clean smell that comes just before autumn fully settles in. Fog came and went in sheets, rolling across the balds like something alive, obscuring the trail for minutes at a time before lifting to reveal views that stretched 50 miles in every direction. The plan was simple. Take the Appalachian Trail south to Grassy Ridge Bald, angle towards Stan Murray Shelter for water, and find a campsite on high ground where the wind would keep the bugs down. 2 nights, back to the car Sunday. I had done variations of this trip 8 times before. I knew what to expect. By mid-afternoon, I was several miles in and had not seen anyone. The trail was empty in both directions. No boot prints in the mud, no voices carrying on the wind. Just me in the mountains and the occasional raven circling overhead. When I stopped to pick a spot near a spring, something caught my eye across the slope. A tent sat tucked against a brush line, low and irregular, with weathered fabric that did not look like modern gear. The color was wrong, a faded olive green instead of the bright synthetic colors most backpackers use now. No one moved near it. No smoke rose from a fire ring. No sound carried across the distance. I watched for 5 minutes. Nothing. The tent just sat there, motionless, as if it had been abandoned mid-trip. I know the protocol for finding unattended gear in the backcountry. You do not touch it. You note the location and report it to rangers in case it belongs to someone who needs help. But something about this tent bothered me. It looked too deliberate, too carefully placed, as if someone had chosen that exact spot for reasons I could not understand. I walked closer and called out. No answer. The tent flap hung open, moving slightly in the breeze. I stopped 10 feet away and called again, louder this time. Still nothing. I approached slowly and looked inside. The tent was empty except for a wool blanket folded with hospital corners and a tin cup sitting upright in the corner. No dust, no spiders, no signs of weathering or age despite the obvious wear on the tent fabric itself. The blanket looked like it had been folded that morning. The cup gleamed as if it had just been polished. It was as if someone had stepped out 5 minutes ago and would be back any second. I backed away and returned to my original plan. I set up my tent 300 yards away, far enough to respect whoever owned the other site, but close enough to keep an eye on it. I made dinner as the sun dropped toward the western ridge. The light turned golden, then orange, then deep red. Shadows stretched across the balds. I kept my headlamp pointed at the strange tent, checking it every few minutes. Around 10 p.m., I saw a silhouette standing beside it. Tall, shoulders square, not moving, just standing there like a statue. I called out, "Hello? Are you okay?" The figure did not respond. I blinked, and it was gone. Not walked away, not turned around, just gone, as if it had never been there at all. I told myself it was a trick of the light, a shadow cast by a rock or a tree that my tired brain had interpreted as human. But the balds do not have trees, and the rocks do not stand upright in human shapes. I climbed into my tent and zipped it shut. I lay in my sleeping bag with my headlamp on, listening. The wind moved across the grass with a sound like whispers. I heard nothing else. At 2 a.m., I woke to footsteps circling my tent. Steady, measured pacing, not the irregular gait of a deer or the quick scurry of a smaller animal. Human stride, boot on grass. The steps moved in a complete circle around my tent, then started a second loop. I shouted, "I can hear you. Who are you?" The steps stopped. Silence for 10 seconds. I counted them in my head, each one stretching longer than it should. Then the steps resumed, closer this time, just outside the tent wall. I could hear the grass compressing under weight. I could hear fabric brushing against nylon as something moved past the tent door. I did not sleep the rest of the night. I sat with my back against my pack, a knife in my hand, listening. The footsteps continued until first light, circling and stopping and circling again. When dawn finally came, I unzipped my tent. Boot prints circled my site in a perfect loop, size 11 or 12, deep tread, old pattern, the kind you see on vintage hiking boots from the 1960s or 70s. The prints led back toward the strange tent and stopped at the threshold. They did not go inside. They just stopped, as if whoever made them had stood at the entrance and then vanished. I walked over to the tent. The flap was still open. The interior was still empty, but now there were objects arranged in a line leading from the tent to my campsite. A spoon, tarnished but intact. A button, brass military style. A length of frayed rope, cut cleanly at both ends. A bullet casing, corroded green with age. All placed with even spacing, about 6 feet apart, forming a straight line that connected the two camps. I did not touch them. I took photos with my phone, though I had no signal to send them anywhere. I packed fast, hands shaking, trying to keep my movements efficient despite the adrenaline flooding my system. I did not bother breaking down my tent properly. I just stuffed it into my pack and started back toward Carver's Gap. Halfway down, fog rolled in thick. Visibility dropped to 20 feet. The trail disappeared into white nothingness. I could barely see the next blaze marker. I heard whistling. Not a bird. A human tune, slow and deliberate. A melody I did not recognize but that felt old, like something from a folk song I had heard once and forgotten. It came from ahead on the trail. I stopped. The whistling stopped. I moved. It started again, now from my left, off trail. I stopped again. It stopped again. We played this game for 30 seconds. Me frozen in place, the whistling responding to my every movement. Then it came from my right, and I realized it was moving around me, circling, the same way the footsteps had circled my tent. I veered right off trail, pushing through the rhododendron. Branches grabbed at my pack. Roots tried to trip me. The whistling followed, matching my pace exactly, staying just out of sight in the fog. I broke into a run. I did not care about the trail anymore. I just needed to get lower, to get out of the fog, to reach the parking lot where there would be people and cars and normalcy. The whistling grew louder, closer, coming from multiple directions now, as if several people were whistling the same tune in harmony. My lungs burned. My legs screamed. I did not stop until I hit the parking lot. I burst out of the fog and onto pavement, stumbling, nearly falling, catching myself on the hood of my car. I sat in my car with the doors locked and the engine running. I looked back at the trailhead. A figure stood at the forest edge, too far to see clearly, but shaped like a man. Tall, broad shoulders, wearing what looked like old hiking clothes, the kind with canvas pants and a wool shirt. The figure raised one hand, not waving, just holding it up in a gesture I could not interpret. Then it stepped backward into the trees and disappeared into the fog. I drove back to Johnson City with my hands tight on the wheel and my mind racing. When I got home, I researched old records of the Rhone. I found a newspaper article from 1923 about a fire warden named Samuel Pritchard, who disappeared from a station near Grassy Ridge. They found his gear arranged neatly in his cabin, his boots by the door, his coat on a hook, his pocket watch still ticking on the table. No body, no tracks leading away, no sign of struggle or distress, just an empty cabin and a man who had vanished as if he had never existed. The article mentioned that people reported seeing a lone figure on the balds for years after his disappearance, always at dawn or dusk, always watching the horizon as if looking for smoke. The fire warden's job was to watch for fires, to stand on high ground and scan the mountains for the first signs of smoke, to raise the alarm before a small fire became a catastrophe. Some people in the article said Pritchard was still doing his job, that his sense of duty had kept him tethered to the place even after death. I found other accounts in online forums and hiking blogs. A woman in 2015 who said she saw a man in old clothes standing on Grassy Ridge Bald at sunrise. He did not respond to her greetings. He just watched the mountains. A couple in 2018 who found a tin cup and a wool blanket at their campsite, items they had not brought with them. A solo hiker in 2021 who heard whistling in the fog and followed it for an hour before realizing he was walking in circles. All of them described the same feeling, that they were being watched, evaluated, measured against some standard they did not understand. I will not be going back to Roan Highlands, not because I am afraid, though fear is part of it, but because I understand now that some places are not meant for casual visitors. They are meant for people with purpose, with duty, with a reason to be there that goes beyond recreation. The fire warden is still watching, and if you camp the Roan Highlands and you find old gear that looks too clean, or you see someone who does not respond to calls, or you hear whistling that follows you in fog, do not investigate. Get to your car. Some places hold on to their missing longer than they should, and the watchers do not always distinguish between the living and the dead. They only care whether you belong there or not, and if you have to ask, you do not. I am writing this so someone else does not make the same mistake. My name is Jackson. I live in Chattanooga and have backpacked the Cohutta Wilderness in North Georgia more times than I can count. It is the largest wilderness area in the state, over 37,000 acres, where cell service dies fast and trail markers fade into laurel thickets that grow so dense you cannot see 5 feet in any direction. In 2019, my college roommate went missing on the Jacks River Trail. His name was Owen. We had graduated together, hiked together, talked about buying land in the mountains together someday. He went out on a solo trip in October and never came back. They found his pack 3 days later, contents scattered across the trail near Beach Bottom. No sign of struggle. The search lasted 2 weeks. Dogs, helicopters, volunteers, combing every drainage and ridge. Nothing. Last fall, I went back with 3 friends. DeAndre, who talks too much when he is nervous and fills every silence with commentary nobody asked for. Janessa, who had trained for this trip like it was a marathon, running stairs with a weighted pack and studying topographic maps until she could navigate the area in her sleep. Davian, who brought enough first aid supplies for a small clinic and checked everyone's gear twice before we left the trailhead. We planned 5 days, following Jacks River north to Beach Bottom, then looping back through Hemp Top, the same route Owen had taken. I told myself it was about closure, but honestly, I was still looking for something the search teams had missed. We started on a Tuesday in late September. The weather forecast was perfect. Cool nights, warm days, no rain predicted. The trail follows Jacks River through a canyon with walls so steep you lose the sun by 4 p.m. even in summer. The sound of water is constant, white noise that makes conversation difficult and thinking easy. We made good time the first day, covering 8 miles and setting up camp on a gravel bar near the river. That night, we built a fire and cooked freeze-dried meals and talked about nothing important. DeAndre told stories about his job that were probably embellished. Janessa stretched and checked her feet for blisters. Davian organized his medical kit for the 3rd time. Everything felt normal. On day 2, we found a cabin no map showed. It sat 50 yards off trail in a clearing choked with kudzu, the vine covering the ground like a green carpet and climbing the surrounding trees until they looked more plant than wood. The structure was old but intact. Tin roof, stone chimney, windows boarded from the inside. The door hung open, not broken or forced, just open as if someone had walked out and forgotten to close it. We called out, no answer. The forest was silent except for the river in the distance. We approached slowly. DeAndre made a joke about every horror movie starting this way. Janessa told him to shut up. We stopped at the threshold and looked inside. The air smelled like wet wood and kerosene. A table held 4 place settings, plates clean, forks aligned perfectly parallel to the edges, knives placed blade in at exact angles. No dust, no spider webs, no accumulated debris from an abandoned structure. The settings looked like someone had just finished arranging them and would be back any moment to serve dinner. Davian stepped inside first. His boots made hollow sounds on the floorboards. He walked to the table and looked at the plates without touching them. He said, "This is wrong." I agreed. We all agreed. But we could not stop looking. The cabin had 2 rooms. The main room, with the table and a fireplace, and a back room with a closed door. DeAndre found a notebook on the table. Pages filled with names and dates. The handwriting changed from entry to entry, different people recording different events. The last entry was 3 days ago. It read, 4 came, 3 left, waiting. I counted us. 4. DeAndre looked at me and said what we were all thinking. We should leave. Janessa said, we should tell someone about this. Davian walked to the back room and tried the door. Locked. We heard something shift behind it. Not wind, not animals. A deliberate scrape of weight on floorboards. The sound of someone standing up or sitting down. Davian backed away from the door. We left the cabin and walked quickly back to the trail. None of us spoke for the next mile. That night we camped a mile away from the cabin, on high ground with clear sightlines in all directions. We did not build a fire. We ate cold food and sat in a circle facing outward, watching the forest. At midnight, I woke to voices. Low conversation, too far to make out words. It came from the direction of the cabin. I woke the others. We listened together. The voices continued for 10 minutes, then stopped. Dondre said it could be other hikers. I said other hikers would have lights. We saw no lights. At dawn, we found boot prints leading from the direction of the cabin to our campsite. They stopped 10 feet from Janessa's tent, then turned back. A single set of prints, size 12 or 13, deep tread pattern, old style. The prints were fresh, made during the night while we slept. Someone had walked right up to us and stood there, watching, then left. Davian's water filter was missing from his pack. We searched the area and found it later, placed in the center of the trail, disassembled into perfect rows of components arranged by size. We decided to hike out fast, cutting our trip short. 5 days reduced to 2. None of us wanted to stay. On the way past the cabin, the door was closed. We'd left it open. I was sure of it. I remembered looking back as we left and seeing the dark opening. Now the door was shut tight. Dondre walked up and knocked. It seemed like the polite thing to do, though nothing about the situation called for politeness. The door swung inward, slowly. The place settings were gone. The notebook was gone. On the table sat Davian's water filter, reassembled, filled with fresh water. As we turned to leave, the locked door in the back creaked open. A man stepped out. 50s, weathered face, gray beard, wearing canvas pants, and a flannel shirt that looked decades old. He held a hunting rifle across his chest, not pointing it at us but making it clear he had it. He looked at each of us in turn, taking his time, as if memorizing our faces. Then he spoke. 5 words, in a voice that sounded like gravel. "You were not invited here." We ran. I do not remember the details of the run. I remember branches hitting my face. I remember DeAndre tripping and Janessa pulling him up. I remember the sound of my own breathing, loud and panicked. I remember not looking back because some part of my brain understood that looking back would be a mistake. We reached the trailhead in what must have been record time, though I could not tell you how long it actually took. We threw our packs in the car and drove to the ranger station. We called the Forest Service. They sent rangers. They found the cabin. They said it was a known squatter site, abandoned for years, no recent activity. When we insisted, when we told them about the man with the rifle and the place settings and the notebook, they checked inside. Empty, no table, no place settings, no locked room, just rotted floorboards and animal droppings and the kind of decay you expect from a structure that has been empty for decades. They humored us. They took our names and contact information. They said they would keep an eye on the area, but I could see in their faces that they thought we were either lying or mistaken. I went through old newspaper archives when I got home. I spent hours searching local library databases and historical records. In 1987, 4 hikers went missing in Cohuta near Jacks River. 2 men, 2 women, all in their 20s. They had planned a week-long trip and were reported overdue by family. Search teams found a cabin. Inside were personal items from all 4. Wallets, jackets, a camera with film still in it. No bodies were ever recovered. The investigation went cold after 6 months. The cabin was burned by authorities as a safety hazard. But maps change and wilderness grows back. And sometimes things that were destroyed do not stay destroyed. I called Owen's family and told them what we found. His mother cried. His father asked if I thought Owen had been at that cabin. I said I did not know. I said the wilderness is bigger than we think it is, and there are places in it that do not follow the rules we expect. He thanked me and hung up. I have not heard from them since. Dondre will not go backpacking anymore. He hikes day trips on popular trails, but refuses to camp. Janessa moved to Colorado and says she prefers mountains with less forest. Davian still hikes Cohuta, but never alone, and never near Jack's River. I went back once, 3 months later, in the middle of winter when the leaves were down and visibility was better. I found the clearing. The cabin was gone. No foundation, no chimney stones, no evidence that anything had ever been built there. Just kudzu-covered ground and the sound of wind through bare trees. If you hike Cohuta and you find a structure not on your map, do not enter. If you see place settings with no dust, leave immediately. If you hear voices when no one should be there, trust your instinct to run. Some invitations are not meant for the living, and some places in the wilderness operate by rules that predate the trails we cut through them. Owen is still missing. The 4 hikers from 1987 are still missing, and I believe that cabin is still out there, waiting for the next group of 4 to wander off trail and knock on a door that should never be opened. The wilderness keeps its secrets, and sometimes those secrets have teeth. I am writing this because the police report does not tell the whole story. My name is Jackson. I live in Asheville but grew up near Bryson City, North Carolina, at the edge of Nantahala National Forest. When I was 17, my cousin disappeared after a rafting trip on the Nantahala River. She was 19, a college sophomore studying environmental science, someone who knew the river and respected it in ways tourists never do. Her car was found at the Wesser, put in, keys inside, wallet on the dashboard, raft rental never returned. The company said she had signed out a raft at 9 a.m. and was expected back by 4 p.m. She never came back. The investigation went cold after 6 months. The detective told my aunt that people sometimes just leave, that maybe she wanted to start over somewhere else. But her bank accounts were never touched. Her phone never pinged another tower. She simply vanished, as if the river had swallowed her whole. Last summer, I drove down with friends to kayak the gorge. It had been 8 years since my cousin disappeared, and I told myself enough time had passed that I could go back without falling apart. Kiana, who had paddled Class 3 rapids since high school and moved through whitewater with the confidence of someone who understands current and physics. McKenna, who brought enough beer for a small party and insisted we camp afterward instead of driving home tired. Olivia, who had a laugh that could cut through any tension and a way of making everything feel less serious than it was. We put in at Nantahala Falls and ran the river without incident. The water was cold and fast and exactly what I needed. By evening, we were setting up tents at a dispersed site off Wai'a Road, a Forest Service road that winds through dense woods about 2 miles from the river. Around 9 p.m., we heard vehicles. 3 trucks drove slowly past our site, headlights off, engines idling low. They stopped 100 yards up the road. Doors opened, no voices, no footsteps, no sounds of camping or unloading gear, just the creak of truck doors and then silence. Doors closed. The trucks sat there, dark and silent, for 20 minutes. I could see their silhouettes against the faint moonlight filtering through the canopy. Then they drove away, still without headlights, moving slowly, as if the drivers knew the road well enough to navigate it blind. We joked about it. McKenna said maybe it was locals looking for a party spot and decided we had claimed it first. Kiana said maybe it was hunters scouting the area for morning. Olivia made a joke about deliverance that nobody laughed at, but none of us slept well. I lay in my tent listening to the forest, trying to separate normal sounds from abnormal ones. Every branch crack felt significant. Every rustle of leaves felt like movement. At 2 a.m., the trucks came back. Same pattern, headlights off. They stopped in the same spot. This time, I counted 5 figures standing between the trucks and our site. They did not move. They did not speak. They just stood there, facing us, too far away to see details, but close enough that I could make out their basic shapes. Tall, broad-shouldered, still. After 10 minutes, they got back in and left. I heard McKenna whisper from her tent, "Did you see that?" I said yes. We all said yes. We stayed awake the rest of the night. At dawn, we found fresh tire tracks circling our campsite. They had driven through the forest, off any road, weaving between trees, completing a full loop around us. The tracks were deep, pressed into soft earth, recent enough that dew had not yet settled into the tread marks. Someone had driven around us while we slept, or tried to sleep, close enough that we should have heard engines, but we had heard nothing after the trucks left the road. We packed to leave. McKenna's kayak was missing. We searched the area and found it 50 yards into the woods, placed upright against a tree as if someone had carried it there and set it down carefully. Not thrown, not damaged, just moved, positioned. As we loaded the car, one truck returned. It parked sideways across Wire Road, blocking us. A man got out. He walked halfway to us, stopped, and stared. He did not speak, did not gesture, just stood there in the middle of the road, watching us. After 2 minutes that felt like 20, he returned to the truck and drove away. We drove out fast. At the Highway 19 junction, all 3 trucks were waiting in a pull-off. They followed us. For 15 miles, they stayed exactly 50 yards behind. No closer, no farther. I changed speed. They changed speed. I turned on my blinker to change lanes. They turned on their blinkers. It was coordinated, deliberate, a message without words. Near Bryson City, I pulled into a gas station. The trucks parked at the far end of the lot. The same man got out and walked toward us. Kiana called 911. The man stopped when he heard her say, "Police." He tilted his head like he was listening, like he was calculating whether we were worth the risk. Then he smiled. Not a friendly smile. The smile of someone who knows something you do not. He turned around and walked back. All 3 trucks left before police arrived. The deputy took our statement. He was young, maybe mid-20s, and he looked tired in a way that suggested he had heard stories like this before. He said there had been reports of suspicious vehicles in that area for years. Nothing concrete, no crimes filed, just hikers and campers who felt watched. Rafters who reported seeing trucks with no headlights. People who found their campsites disturbed in ways that suggested human presence rather than animal activity. He advised us not to return to that section of forest. He said it in a way that made me think he was giving advice his supervisor had told him not to give. I called my aunt and told her what happened. She was silent for a long time. I could hear her breathing on the other end, the kind of breathing that comes before crying or screaming but lands, somewhere in between. Then she said, "They found your cousin's raft 2 years after she disappeared. It was in the woods off Waya Road, stood up against a tree." I felt my stomach drop. I asked why she had never told me. She said she did not want me to go looking. She said the detective had told her it was probably teenagers playing a prank, moving equipment they found abandoned, but she never believed that. She said abandoned rafts do not stay inflated for 2 years. She said someone had been taking care of it. I started researching. I found forum posts going back 15 years. Rafters reporting trucks following them after trips on the Nantahala. Campers finding their gear rearranged. Hikers who felt watched on trails near Waya Road. A pattern that law enforcement either could not see or chose not to see. One post from 2018 mentioned a woman who escaped from a cabin in the woods near the gorge. She said she had been held for 3 days. She said there were others. She said she got out through a window when her captors left to scout new arrivals at the river. The post was deleted within 24 hours. I found a cached version. The woman's username led to a Facebook profile that had been deactivated. I contacted a journalist who covers Appalachian crime. She said off the record that there are pockets of the mountains where normal law does not reach. Places where families or groups have operated outside legal structures for generations. She said rafting companies lose equipment every year. She said some of it turns up, most does not. She said people go missing in the gorge at rates slightly higher than statistical norms, but not high enough to trigger federal involvement. She said I should be careful about asking questions. She said some stories do not want to be told. Kiana moved to Virginia 6 months later. She said it was for work, but I think it was to put distance between herself and what happened. McKenna still lives in Asheville, but refuses to go near Nantahala. Olivia jokes about it in the way she jokes about everything, but she stopped camping. We talk about other things now, normal things, safe things. I drive past Wai'a Road sometimes when I visit my aunt. I do not stop, I do not slow down, but I look. And sometimes I see trucks parked in pull-offs, no headlights, just sitting there, as if waiting for something. And I think about my cousin, about where she might be, about whether she is still waiting for someone to find her the way McKenna's kayak was waiting against that tree. If you camp near Nantahala Gorge and you see vehicles with no headlights circling your site, pack immediately and drive to a public area with lights and people. If trucks follow you at a fixed distance, do not stop until you are surrounded by witnesses. Call police, even if you think they will not believe you. Some groups mark territory in ways law enforcement does not recognize or cannot prosecute. The mountains are old, and the people who know their hidden places are older still, and not all of them follow the rules that govern the rest of us. My cousin is still missing. The 4 kayaks that disappeared from the Wesser outfitter between 2015 and 2020 are still missing. The woman who posted about escaping from a cabin is still missing from the internet. Her profile erased, her story deleted, and the trucks still drive Wai'a Road at night, headlights off, looking for people who wander too far from the main routes. The gorge is beautiful. The river is perfect. And somewhere in the woods between the water and the road, there are people who have turned isolation into opportunity and rafters into something else entirely. I do not know what happened to my cousin, but I know she met someone after her raft trip. I know she trusted them enough to leave her car unlocked. And I know that whatever happened next, it happened in a place where screaming does not carry and help does not come. The wilderness keeps its secrets. And sometimes those secrets have trucks and rifles and the patience to wait for the next group of rafters to make camp in the wrong place. I am writing this because I need someone else to confirm I am not losing my mind. My name is Davian. I solo hike for mental health, and Shining Rock Wilderness in North Carolina is where I go when I need to think without distraction. It is 18,000 acres of high-elevation forest and white quartz outcrops that shine in moonlight like beacons, giving the area its name. The wilderness sits in the Pisgah National Forest at elevations above 5,000 feet, and the exposed rock formations create landscapes that feel more like the surface of another planet than the forests of Appalachia. I have backpacked there 8 times in the past 3 years. Solo trips, always. Just me and the mountains and the silence that comes from being far enough from roads that you cannot hear civilization anymore. The 9th time, something was different. I started from Big East Fork Trail in October. The forecast was clear, temperatures dropping at night but manageable with proper gear. I planned to summit Cold Mountain, camp near the Shining Rock outcrop, then loop back through Graveyard Ridge. The trail was empty. I saw no one all day. No boot prints ahead of me. No voices echoing through the valleys. Just the sound of wind moving through bare trees and my own breathing as I climbed. I made camp 100 yards from Shining Rock around 7 p.m. The outcrop rises above the surrounding forest like a castle wall, white quartz reflecting the fading sunlight. I set up my tent in a flat spot sheltered by laurel bushes, cooked a simple dinner of rice and dehydrated vegetables, and watched the sun drop toward the western ridge. The light turned golden, then orange, then deep red. Shadows stretched across the balds. I felt the familiar sense of peace that comes from being completely alone in a place that feels untouched by human activity. As I ate, I heard drumming. Not music, not the rhythmic patterns of a song. A slow, steady beat, one drum, deep and resonant, steady as a heartbeat. It came from the direction of the rock outcrop. I stopped eating and listened. The drumming continued for 2 minutes, then stopped. I waited. Silence. I convinced myself it was another camper, someone I had not seen on the trail, someone celebrating the sunset in their own way. It came from the direction of the rock. I walked toward it, with my headlamp off, letting my eyes adjust to the twilight. The drumming stopped when I got within 50 feet of the rocks. Complete silence, no retreating footsteps, no voices, nothing. I called out, "Hello?" My voice echoed off the quartz and faded into the forest. No answer. I climbed onto the lower rocks and scanned the area. No one. No evidence that anyone had been there. No disturbed ground, no gear, no fire rings. I returned to my tent and tried to rationalize what I had heard. Sound carries strangely in mountains. What I thought was drumming could have been something else. A woodpecker, a branch falling. My own pulse in my ears after climbing. I settled into my sleeping bag and told myself everything was fine. The drumming started again at 10 p.m. Same rhythm, same deep resonant tone. I walked toward it with my headlamp on this time. The sound moved. It came from behind me. I spun around, sweeping my light across the forest. Nothing. The drumming continued from a new direction, north of my tent. I walked toward it. It moved again, now to the east. I realized I was being led in a circle around my campsite. I stopped moving. The drumming stopped. I stood there for 5 minutes, listening to my own breathing and the wind. Then I returned to my tent and did not come out again until morning. At midnight, I lay in my tent, eyes open, listening. The drumming was now all around me, like multiple drummers in a circle. But the beats stayed synchronized. One rhythm, many sources. The sound was so clear I could feel it vibrating through the ground, through the tent floor, through my chest. I heard voices chanting, not English, not any language I recognized. Low tones, harmonized. Male voices. The chant matched the drum pattern. One beat per syllable. The same phrases repeated over and over. I unzipped my tent and looked out. Figures stood in a circle around the shining rock outcrop. At least 12 of them. They wore no modern clothing, no synthetic fabrics, no headlamps or gear I could identify. They looked like they had stepped out of a history book, dressed in buckskin and cloth. Firelight flickered across their faces and bodies, casting long shadows on the white quartz. But I saw no fire, no flames, no source for the light. They moved in unison, stepping and turning, arms raised, voices rising and falling with the drums. I closed my tent and waited. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my throat. I told myself I was hallucinating. Altitude sickness, dehydration, my brain creating patterns out of darkness and wishful thinking. But the drumming was real. The vibration was real. I could feel it in my bones. The drumming built to a crescendo, layers of rhythm stacking on top of each other until it felt like the entire mountain was vibrating. Then it stopped. Absolute silence. No wind, no insects, no birds, no ambient noise of any kind. The silence lasted 1 minute. I counted the seconds in my head, 60 of them, each one stretching longer than it should. Then normal forest sounds resumed. Wind rustling leaves, a distant owl, the creek running somewhere below. I did not sleep the rest of the night. I sat with my back against my pack, a knife in my hand, even though I knew a knife would do nothing against whatever I had witnessed. I listened for footsteps, for voices, for any indication that the figures were coming toward my tent. Nothing. The forest stayed quiet. Normal. As dawn approached, I heard one final drum beat, single, loud, final, like a period at the end of a sentence. At first light, I walked to the outcrop. The quartz was blackened in a circle 20 feet across, fresh soot, as if a large fire had burned there recently. But there was no wood, no ash, no charcoal, no heat radiating from the stone, just the black mark on white quartz. In the center sat a small bundle wrapped in leather cord. It was the size of my fist, bound tight, with symbols burned into the leather that I did not recognize. I did not touch it. I took photos. I marked the location on my GPS. Then I packed my gear and hiked out. I contacted the Forest Service when I got home. I described what I heard and saw. The ranger I spoke with was quiet for a long time after I finished. Then he said, Shining Rock has a history. He explained that it was a Cherokee ceremonial site used for hundreds of years before settlers arrived. Some people report hearing drums, some see lights. The blackened circle has been documented before. It fades after a few weeks, then reappears months or years later. He said there are theories. Gas seepage that ignites, ball lightning, collective hallucination brought on by altitude and isolation. But he said it in a way that suggested he did not believe any of those explanations. I researched Cherokee history in the area when I got off the phone. Ceremonies were held at high-elevation rock outcrops, especially those with quartz. The Cherokee believed quartz was sacred, a crystalline form of frozen water that held spiritual power. Drumming was used to communicate with spirits, to mark transitions between seasons, to honor the dead. Some rituals lasted all night. If interrupted, Cherokee tradition says the spirits remain, repeating the ceremony until it is completed properly. The ceremony I witnessed, if that is what it was, looked incomplete. The figures had not finished when dawn came. They had simply stopped, frozen in place, then vanished with the light. I went back 3 weeks later. Different trail, different approach, but ending at the same outcrop. I wanted to see if the black circle was still there. It was, slightly faded but still visible. The bundle was gone. In its place was a single white feather, perfectly centered in the circle. I did not touch it. I stood at the edge of the blackened area and spoke out loud. I said I was sorry for interrupting. I said I meant no disrespect. I said I would not come back. The wind picked up. Just wind, probably, but it felt like acknowledgement. I have not been back to Shining Rock since. Not because I'm afraid, though fear is part of it, but because I understand now that some places are not neutral spaces. They carry history. They hold ceremonies that began before my ancestors arrived on this continent. And those ceremonies do not stop just because modern hikers want solitude and mountain views. The drummers are still there. The chanters are still there. And they will keep performing their ritual until it is complete, or until the mountains themselves erode away. If you camp near Shining Rock and you hear drumming after dark, stay in your tent. Do not approach. Do not interrupt. Do not try to document it, or understand it, or fit it into frameworks that make sense to you. Some ceremonies transcend time, and the participants do not distinguish between witness and participant. If you see figures around a fire that has no source, you are seeing something that was not meant for your eyes. Respect that. Leave at first light. Do not return to that exact spot. The mountains will not harm you for witnessing, but they might harm you for interfering. I still solo hike. I still go to the mountains for mental health and clarity, but I choose different places now. Places without quartz outcrops that shine in moonlight. Places without histories written in stone and ceremony. Some silence is just the absence of noise. Other silence is the space between drum beats, the pause before a chant begins again, the held breath of mountains waiting for ceremonies to resume. And if you cannot tell the difference, you should not be camping alone in places where both kinds of silence exist. I'm writing this because I want it documented before my memory changes the details. My name is Kaylin. I work as a paramedic in Cashiers, North Carolina, and Panthertown Valley is my after-work escape. It is 6,500 acres of granite domes, waterfalls, and trails that wind through valleys where cell service is a memory. The area is sometimes called the Yosemite of the East because of its dramatic rock formations and pristine wilderness character. In 3 years, I have never felt unsafe there. I have hiked alone dozens of times, sometimes after night shifts when I need to decompress from calls that stay in my head longer than they should. Until last month, Panthertown was the one place where I could breathe without replaying the sounds of accidents and medical emergencies. I went in alone on a Tuesday afternoon in late September. Light traffic, good weather, temperature in the mid-60s with clear skies. I planned to hit Schoolhouse Falls, loop through Max Gap, and be back at my car before dark. Easy 5-mile circuit. I have done it a dozen times, enough that I know every turn, every rock scramble, every creek crossing. The trail was empty when I started. I saw one couple heading out as I was heading in. They smiled and said the falls were running well. That was the last human contact I had for 3 hours. I was crossing the creek near the falls when I heard screaming, high-pitched, female, raw terror, not the startled scream of someone who saw a snake or slipped on wet rocks. The scream of someone in immediate danger. It came from upstream, maybe 200 yards, based on how sound carries in the valley. I am trained to respond. 12 years as a paramedic, hundreds of emergency calls, muscle memory that kicks in before conscious thought. I ran toward it. The terrain near Schoolhouse Falls is rough, laurel thickets, boulders slick with moss, fallen logs covered in fungi. I pushed through as fast as I could without breaking an ankle. The screaming continued, sustained, desperate. I reached the area where the sound originated. Nothing. No person. No signs of struggle, no disturbed vegetation, no blood, no gear. The screaming continued now from behind me. I spun around and yelled, "Where are you? I'm a paramedic." The screaming stopped. 10 seconds of silence. Then it started again, from my right, deeper in the valley. I followed the sound for 15 minutes. It kept moving. Always ahead, always just out of sight. The pattern was too consistent to be coincidence. Every time I got close, the screaming would stop for a few seconds, then resume from a new direction. I realized I was off trail, pushing through rhododendron thickets that grew so dense I had to force branches aside with my arms. My jacket caught on twigs. My pack scraped against trunks. I stopped to check my compass. The screaming stopped when I stopped. I took one step. It started again, surrounding me from all directions. The screaming multiplied. Now 2 voices, then 3, all female. All screaming the same pattern, 3 seconds on, 5 seconds off, synchronized perfectly, like a recording playing from multiple hidden speakers. But there are no speakers in Panthertown Valley, no infrastructure, no power lines, no roads within miles, just wilderness and granite and the sound of women screaming in terror from places I could not see. I stopped moving. The screaming stopped. Complete silence. No birds, no wind, no creek noise despite being near water. I stood perfectly still and listened. My training told me to keep searching, that someone was in distress and needed help. My instinct told me something was wrong in a way I did not understand. I compromised. I called out again, louder this time. "If you can hear me, I am a paramedic. I have medical supplies. Make a sound so I can find you." Nothing. No response. No movement. I took one deliberate step forward. All 3 voices resumed screaming simultaneously. The sound was so loud and so close that I flinched. It felt like the screaming was coming from directly beside me, mouth to my ear, but there was nothing there. I pulled out my whistle and blew 3 short blasts, the universal signal for distress. If there were other hikers in the area, they would hear it and come. The screaming intensified. 4 voices now, 5, overlapping, building to a crescendo that felt designed to disorient. I pushed through a laurel thicket and found clothing. A woman's shirt, torn and faded, hanging from a branch at eye level. I recognized the brand. My sister wore the same one. Same color, same style. I checked the tag. Same size. My pulse spiked. I felt adrenaline flood my system in a way that felt different from emergency calls. This was not the focused energy of professional response. This was fear. I pulled the shirt down and looked at it closely. The fabric was weathered but not rotted. Weeks or months old, not years. No blood. No obvious damage beyond the tear at the collar. I put it in my pack because evidence matters. Because if someone is missing, I need to bring proof. The screaming stopped. Absolute silence again. I counted to 30. Nothing. Then I heard breathing. Not my own breathing. Someone else's, close, ragged, like someone trying to catch their breath after running. I turned in a slow circle. No one. The breathing moved. It came from behind me, then to my left, then ahead. It was circling me the same way the screaming had circled me. I said, "I know you are there. I'm here to help. Please show yourself." The breathing turned into laughter. Low. Female. Not the laughter of someone who finds something funny. The laughter of someone who has lost their mind. I ran. I did not care about the trail anymore. I pulled out my compass and forced myself to navigate back toward the parking area, ignoring the sounds. The laughter followed. The screaming resumed, now mixed with the laughter. A chorus of voices that sounded human but felt wrong. I crashed through undergrowth, tripped over roots, caught myself on trees. My hands bled from scraping bark. My shins hit rocks. I did not stop. I found the trail and ran back to the parking lot. I burst out of the forest and onto gravel, stumbling, nearly falling, catching myself on the hood of my car. I stood there, breathing hard, listening. The forest was silent. Normal bird sounds, wind in trees, creek water running somewhere below. No screaming, no laughter, no breathing except my own. I sat in my car with the doors locked and the engine running. I called the sheriff. I told them about the screaming and the shirt. They said they would send someone. A deputy arrived 40 minutes later. I showed him the shirt. I described where I found it and what I heard. When he took notes, he asked if I had been drinking or if I was on any medication. I said no to both. He said they would search the area the next day. They searched. No shirt where I said it was. No evidence of anyone in distress. No disturbed vegetation along the path I described taking through the thickets. The deputy called me 2 days later and said mountain lions can sound like screaming women. I told him I have heard mountain lions. I grew up in these mountains. I know what they sound like. This was not that. He said sometimes people hear things in the wilderness that are hard to explain. He said altitude and exertion can cause auditory hallucinations. He said stress from my job might make me more susceptible. He was polite, professional, and completely unconvinced. I called my sister that night. She was fine, at home in Greenville with her husband and 2 kids. She asked if I still had the shirt she gave me 2 years ago, the light blue one with the mountain logo. I said I thought I did. I looked in my closet that night. It was gone. I had not noticed. I do not lose clothes. I do not give them away without remembering. But the shirt was not there. I went back through my photos from the hike. I had taken a picture of the shirt when I found it, proof before I put it in my pack. The photos showed the branch, the laurel leaves, but no shirt, just empty space where I knew the shirt had been hanging. I checked the metadata, correct date, correct time, correct GPS coordinates, but the shirt I had held in my hands, the shirt I had put in my pack, the shirt I had shown to the deputy, was not in the photo. I researched Panthertown Valley when I could not sleep. I found stories going back decades, Cherokee legends about spirits in the valley, women who died in the mountains and whose voices still call out. Some stories said they were murdered. Others said they got lost and died of exposure. A few said they were taken by something that lives in the deepest parts of the valley, something that mimics human voices to lure others in. In 1987, a woman went missing while hiking Panthertown alone. They found her car at the parking area. They found her pack on the trail near Max Gap. They never found her. Search teams reported hearing screaming that seemed to move through the forest. When they followed it, they found nothing. The search was called off after 2 weeks. In 2003, 2 hikers reported hearing a woman screaming near Schoolhouse Falls. They searched for hours. They called 911. Rangers came. They searched until dark. No one was found. No one was reported missing. In 2015, a man camping in the valley said he woke to a woman screaming outside his tent. He went out with a flashlight and saw nothing. The screaming continued all night, moving in circles around his campsite. He left at first light and reported it to rangers. They found no evidence of anyone else in the area. I joined an online forum for Appalachian hikers and asked if anyone had experienced anything similar in Panthertown. I got 23 responses. Most were dismissive, 3 were not. One woman said she heard her dead mother's voice calling her name while hiking Max Gap. One man said he found his wedding ring in the forest 2 years after losing it, placed on a rock in the middle of the trail as if someone had left it for him. One person said they heard screaming in 2019 and followed it for an hour before realizing they were walking in circles. I have not been back to Panthertown since. Not because I do not believe in rational explanations, I do. I believe in biology and physics and the known ways that sound moves through terrain. But I also believe what I heard. I believe the shirt I held in my hands. I believe the breathing and the laughter and the way the screaming moved through the forest in patterns that felt deliberate. Some things do not fit into frameworks I was trained to use. Some sounds cannot be explained by mountain lions or stress or altitude. If you hike Panthertown and you hear screaming that moves when you approach, do not follow it. If you find personal items in the forest that you recognize, leave them. Do not touch them. Do not bring them with you. Some valleys echo more than sound. Some places hold on to voices that do not belong to the living anymore. And if you are a trained responder like me, someone whose instinct is always to help, you need to understand that not every call for help is meant to be answered. Some calls are traps. Some screams are bait. And some mountains know exactly what sound will make you leave the trail and walk into places where help does not exist and rescue does not come. I am writing this because I do not want anyone else to stop for him. My name is Olivia. I grew up in Boone, North Carolina, and have driven the Blue Ridge Parkway hundreds of times. It is 469 miles of scenic road through the Appalachians, connecting Shenandoah National Park in Virginia to Great Smoky Mountains National Park in North Carolina. The parkway follows ridge crests and winds through high-elevation forests, where the views stretch for miles and the air smells like pine and possibility. In 20 years of driving that road, I never picked up a hitchhiker. Not once. My parents warned me about it. Every true crime documentary I ever watched warned me about it. The statistics warn everyone about it. But last week I did it anyway. I was driving south from Blowing Rock around 10 p.m. Stupid decision, I know. The parkway has no lights, no shoulders wide enough to pull onto safely, no cell service for long stretches. But I had done it before a dozen times, and nothing bad had ever happened. I knew the curves. I knew where deer liked to cross. I knew which sections had guardrails and which ones dropped off into darkness with nothing to stop a car from rolling down the mountainside. The night was clear, temperature in the low 40s, no fog. I was making good time, windows cracked to keep me alert, radio playing quietly. Mile marker 294 near Moses Cone Park. A man stood on the side of the road, thumb out, facing my direction. He wore jeans and a dark jacket. Nothing unusual, nothing threatening, just a person who needed help. I passed him at 50 miles per hour, got a good look in my headlights. Normal looking. 30-something maybe. No visible weapons. No erratic behavior. Just standing there, with his thumb out like hitchhikers have done for generations. I should have kept driving. Every instinct I had told me to keep driving. But I felt guilty. It was cold. He had no car. The nearest exit was miles away. I stopped 100 yards ahead and waited. In my rearview mirror, I watched him walk toward me. He moved slowly, not in a hurry. That should have been the first red flag. People who actually need help move faster. They jog, they wave gratefully, they show relief. He just walked at the same measured pace, hands in his pockets, like he had all the time in the world, like he knew I would wait. I told myself I was being paranoid. I unlocked the passenger door. He got in. He said thank you. His voice was flat, no accent, no emotion, no inflection at all. The kind of voice a computer generates when it reads text aloud. He did not smell like someone who had been outside. No sweat, no dirt, no smoke from a campfire, no scent of any kind. Just a complete absence of smell, which my brain registered as wrong even though I could not articulate why. I asked where he was going. He said south. I asked how far. He said just south. He stared straight ahead through the windshield. His hands rested on his knees, palms down, fingers splayed in a way that looked deliberate. We drove in silence for 5 miles. He did not move, did not shift in his seat, did not blink that I could see. His hands stayed in the exact same position. I tried to make conversation, asked if he was visiting the area or if he lived nearby. He did not answer. I asked if he had car trouble. No answer. I asked if he needed me to drop him at a specific location or if anywhere south was fine. Nothing. Just silence and the sound of my tires on pavement and my own breathing getting louder in my ears. I glanced at him. In the dashboard light, his skin looked wrong, too smooth, too pale, like latex or silicone, like a prosthetic, no pores, no texture, no variation in color. I looked at his hands, same thing, perfect uniformity. No hair on the backs of his fingers, no veins visible under the skin, no cuts or scars or any signs of use. I felt my pulse spike. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. I asked his name. He turned his head toward me. The movement was too smooth, like something on a gimbal. His eyes were completely black, no whites, no irises, no pupils. Just black from edge to edge, reflecting the dashboard lights like polished stone. He smiled. The smile spread across his face slowly, mechanically, showing teeth that were too white and too perfect. He said, "You should not have stopped." I slammed on the brakes. The car skidded. I heard the ABS system engage, felt the pedals pulse under my foot. He did not react, did not brace himself, did not reach for the dashboard, just sat there, smiling, hands still on his knees. The car came to a stop in the middle of the parkway. I reached across and opened his door. "Get out," I said. My voice sounded high and tight. He did not move. I screamed, "Get out." He tilted his head, still smiling. Then he opened his mouth. No teeth, no tongue, no throat. Just a black void that seemed to extend further back than a human mouth should. He leaned toward me. I grabbed my keys, opened my door, and ran. I did not think about it. I just moved. I ran 50 yards down the parkway and turned to look back. He sat in the passenger seat, unmoving, silhouetted against my headlights. I stood there, breathing hard, watching, trying to decide what to do. After 5 minutes that felt like an hour, he got out. He closed the door gently. He walked south along the parkway at the same measured pace he had used to approach my car. He did not look back. He did not run. He just walked until the darkness swallowed him. I waited another 10 minutes. The parkway was empty. No other cars. No lights except mine. No sounds except wind and my own pulse hammering in my ears. I got back in my car slowly, checking the back seat first, checking under the seats, making sure he had not somehow circled back. The passenger seat was empty. I locked all the doors. I turned the car around and drove north to the nearest exit, checking the rearview mirror every few seconds. I reported it to the park rangers the next morning. I sat in their office at the Moses Cone Manor and told them everything. Where I picked him up, what he looked like, what he said. The ranger taking my statement was older, maybe late 50s, with gray hair and the kind of weathered face that comes from decades of outdoor work. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he asked if I had been drinking. I said no. He asked if I was on any medication. I said no. He asked if I had any history of mental health issues. I said no, and I felt my face get hot with anger. He said there have been reports of a hitchhiker on that stretch for over 30 years. Same description, same mile marker area, same black eyes. No one has ever seen him arrive or leave. He just appears at mile marker 294, gets a ride south, and disappears. The ranger said they have increased patrols in that area over the years. They have never found him. He said some people think it is multiple people playing a prank. Others think it is something else. He did not specify what something else meant. I went home and researched. I found forum posts going back to 1993. A trucker who picked up a hitchhiker near Moses Cone and said the man had no reflection in the rearview mirror. A woman in 1998 who stopped for someone and said his skin felt cold when she shook his hand, cold like metal left outside overnight. A college student in 2005 who gave a ride to someone matching the description and said the passenger left no indentation in the seat after he got out. A family in 2012 who saw someone standing at mile marker 294 and slowed down but did not stop, said they watched him in their mirrors, and he never moved, just stood there watching them drive away. Or I found a newspaper article from 1967. A woman named Margaret Foster had been driving the parkway alone at night. She stopped for a hitchhiker near Moses Cone Park. He got in her car and did not speak. She said she drove for several miles before she realized something was wrong. When she looked at him, his eyes were black. She screamed and drove off the road, crashing into a tree. She survived. The passenger was gone when emergency responders arrived. She told police he had vanished from a moving vehicle. They found no evidence of anyone else at the scene. No footprints, no fibers, no DNA. Margaret Foster moved to Florida 3 months later and refused to ever speak about what happened. I found a similar story from 1983. A man named Robert Chen picked up a hitchhiker near the same location. The passenger said 3 words during the ride. "You should not have stopped." Robert threw him out of the car while it was still moving. He said the figure rolled when it hit the pavement, then stood up and walked away as if nothing had happened. Robert reported it to rangers. They found no body, no blood on the road, no evidence of anyone being thrown from a vehicle. The pattern goes back further than I could trace. Every decade has reports. Always the same location, always the same description, always the same outcome. The hitchhiker gets in, the driver realizes something is wrong. The hitchhiker either disappears or walks away. No one has ever been able to capture him on video despite multiple attempts. No one has ever successfully followed him after he leaves a vehicle. I joined a paranormal forum and posted my experience. I got 47 responses in 3 days. Most were supportive. A few called me crazy. 3 people messaged me privately with their own stories. One woman said she stopped for the hitchhiker in 2019 and he whispered something to her before he left. She would not tell me what he whispered, but she said she has nightmares about it. One man said he saw the hitchhiker in 2021 and kept driving, watched in his mirror as the figure turned to watch him pass. Said he felt like he had dodged something worse than death. One person said their grandfather saw the same hitchhiker in 1955, decades before. The parkway was even completed standing on the old road that preceded it. I have theories. None of them make sense. Ghosts do not get into cars. Hallucinations do not leave passenger doors open. Pranksters do not maintain the same routine for 70 years. Whatever I picked up on the Blue Ridge Parkway was not human. Or it was human once and became something else. Or it is something that learned to look human enough to be trusted. I do not know. I only know what I saw and what I felt and the way my car smelled after he left. Like ozone. Like the air after lightning strikes. Like something charged and wrong. I still drive the parkway, but never at night. Never alone. And never past mile marker 294. If you drive the Blue Ridge Parkway at night and you see a hitchhiker near Moses Cone Park, do not stop. If you have already stopped and he gets in, do not let him speak. Stop the car immediately and run. Do not worry about your vehicle. Do not worry about looking foolish. Do not worry about anything except getting distance between yourself and whatever is sitting in your passenger seat wearing human skin like a costume. Some roads hold more than memories. Some curves lead to places that are not on any map, and some passengers are not trying to get somewhere. They are trying to take you somewhere you cannot come back from. I'm writing this because 5 people deserve to be remembered. My name is Janessa. I work for a search and rescue team in Asheville, North Carolina. We cover sections of the Blue Ridge Parkway and surrounding wilderness areas within a 50-mile radius of the city. In my 7 years with SAR, I've worked 40 missions: lost hikers, injured climbers, elderly people with dementia who wandered from care facilities, children who strayed from campsites. We have found most of them, some alive, some not, but we found them. We brought them home, or we brought closure to their families. Only one mission still haunts me. Only one keeps me awake at night, replaying decisions and wondering what we missed. In June 2023, we got a call about overdue hikers. A group of 5 had started the Craggy Pinnacle Trail on Friday morning. They planned to summit the peak, camp at Craggy Gardens, and return Saturday afternoon. The area is not large. The trail is well marked and heavily trafficked. Total distance may be 6 miles round trip with an elevation gain that challenges casual hikers, but nothing technical. By Sunday morning, when none of them had checked in with family, we were notified. Standard protocol. We mobilized 20 searchers and 2 dog teams. The weather had been clear all weekend. No storms, no temperature extremes, no obvious hazards. We expected to find them quickly. Maybe injured from a fall on the rocky sections near the summit. Maybe lost on a side trail despite the clear signage. Maybe dealing with a medical emergency that had slowed them down. We found their campsite by noon, tents still standing, 4 of them properly staked, rain flies secured. Food hung properly in a bear bag 15 feet off the ground. Sleeping bags laid out inside the tents, some partially unzipped, as if people had been using them. All their packs were there. 5 packs arranged in a neat row outside the largest tent. Identification in the packs confirmed. These belonged to our missing hikers, but no people. We secured the scene and called for additional resources. This was not a simple case of hikers running late. This was something else. We found footprints leading from the camp into the rhododendron thicket. 5 sets, all adult-sized, walking not running, evenly spaced as if they were taking a casual stroll. The prints were clear in the soft soil near the creek. We followed them for 100 yards. Then they vanished, not faded, not obscured by harder ground. Vanished, as if the hikers had simply lifted off the ground and flown away. The dog teams arrived. We gave them scent articles from the sleeping bags. Both dogs picked up the trail immediately and followed the same path we had traced through the footprints. They reached the spot where the prints ended. Both dogs stopped. They whined. They circled. They refused to go further. The handlers tried to encourage them forward. The dogs sat down and would not move. This is unusual behavior for trained search dogs. They are conditioned to follow scent regardless of terrain or obstacle. But these dogs, both of them, different breeds from different training programs, had the same reaction at the same spot. They wanted no part of whatever lay ahead. One of the tents had a journal inside, personal notebook, spiral-bound, water-stained cover. The last entry was dated Friday night at 11:47 p.m. The handwriting was neat and controlled, no signs of panic or distress. It read, "We heard singing. Everyone heard it. Beautiful and strange, like nothing I have ever heard before. We are going to find the source. If we are not back by morning, we went east from camp." The entry was signed with initials I did not recognize. We searched east from camp. The terrain gets rough in that direction. Dense laurel thickets that grow head height. Granite outcroppings slick with moss. Creek drainages choked with fallen timber. We moved slowly, calling out names, blowing whistles, listening for responses. Nothing. We expanded the search pattern. We brought in technical rope teams for the steeper sections. We searched until dark Saturday, resumed at first light Sunday. The dog teams tracked scent to a clearing 200 yards from camp. The dogs stopped again at the edge of the clearing, whined, and refused to enter. The handlers had never seen this behavior. One handler said his dog acts this way around rattlesnakes, a learned response to avoid danger. But there were no snakes, No obvious threats. Just an open space surrounded by forest. In the clearing, we found arranged stones. A circle 15 feet across, made from river rocks that did not match the local geology. Inside the circle, 5 backpacks laid in a star pattern. 5 points radiating from a center. None of them belonged to the missing hikers. We checked the tags and registration cards inside. Different names, different dates. The oldest was from 1998, a pack manufactured by a company that went out of business in 2003, weathered but intact. The newest was from 2019, 4 years old but looking like it had been placed there yesterday. We documented everything: photos, measurements, GPS coordinates. We bagged the packs as evidence. We expanded the search to 3 miles in all directions from the clearing. We brought in helicopters with thermal imaging. We coordinated with adjacent SAR teams. We searched for 5 days. No clothing, no signs of struggle, no blood, no bodies. 5 people had simply vanished from a well-traveled area of the Blue Ridge Parkway as if they had never existed. On day 4, I returned to the clearing alone before dawn. I needed to see it without the chaos of a large team. I needed to sit with it and think. I heard singing as the sun came up. Female voices, harmonized, no words I could recognize. Beautiful and wrong at the same time. The kind of singing that makes your chest ache but your skin crawl. It came from the forest beyond the clearing, past the stone circle. I walked toward it. The singing stopped. I called out, "Hello, say our team. If you can hear me, call out." Silence. Absolute silence. No birds, no wind, no ambient forest sounds. I took another step. The ground gave way. I fell 10 feet into a hole covered with branches and leaves. A pit trap, deliberately constructed, concealed. I hit the bottom hard enough to knock the wind out of my lungs. My ankle twisted. My ribs hit something solid. I lay there for 30 seconds trying to breathe, trying to process what had happened. The walls were smooth, shaped, dug with tools. This was not a natural sinkhole or animal burrow. This was human-made. My team pulled me out 15 minutes later. They had heard me fall, heard me shouting for help. I had a sprained ankle and bruised ribs. Nothing broken, but enough damage that I could not continue the search. We documented the pit. We found 2 more nearby. Same construction, same concealment, same dimensions, roughly 6 feet deep and 3 feet wide. Man-made, recently dug, not marked on any map or trail maintenance log. We called in cadaver dogs. They hit on all 3 pits. Positive alerts, human remains detected. Forensics teams excavated. They found bone fragments in all 3 pits, human. Multiple individuals based on preliminary analysis. DNA testing was ordered, but the results came back inconclusive. The bones were too degraded, too old, too compromised by soil acidity and time. The case remains open. The 5 hikers are still missing. 3 sets of remains were found but could not be identified. The backpacks from the clearing were traced to their original owners. 2 of those people were reported missing in the Craggy Gardens area in 1998 and 2003. 3 were never reported missing at all. Their packs purchased, but their disappearances apparently unnoticed by anyone who cared enough to file a report. The authorities closed the clearing and filled in the pits. They marked the area as hazardous on internal maps but did not publicize the danger. Craggy Gardens sees hundreds of visitors every week, thousands during peak foliage season. Most never leave the main trail. Most take photos at the summit and return to their cars and drive home to tell their friends about the beautiful views. They do not know that 200 yards from the marked trail, people have been disappearing for at least 25 years. I quit SAR 6 months later. Not because of the injury. My ankle healed, my ribs healed, but I could not reconcile what we found with any framework that made sense. I could not explain the singing. I could not explain the pits. I could not explain how 5 people walked into the forest following a sound and were never seen again. I could not sleep without hearing that singing, beautiful and terrible. calling from places I could not see. I researched the history of Craggy Gardens when I could not let it go. Cherokee territory originally, high elevation ceremonial sites. European settlers moved in during the 1800s, logging operations, subsistence farming. The Blue Ridge Parkway was constructed in the 1930s, bringing access and tourism, but the deep forest, the places off-trail, remained largely untouched. Records show at least 15 people have gone missing in the Craggy Gardens area since 1950. Most were solo hikers. A few were couples. One was a group of 3. Our case was the largest, 5 people at once. I found one account from 1967. A ranger reported hearing singing near the Craggy Pinnacle summit. He investigated and found a stone circle similar to what we found. He reported it to his supervisors. His report was filed and forgotten. The ranger retired in 1972 and died in 1989. His family donated his personal papers to the Parkway archives. His private journals mentioned the singing multiple times. He wrote that it was the most beautiful sound he had ever heard. He wrote that he had to physically restrain himself from following it into the forest. He wrote that whatever was singing was not human and did not want to be found but wanted very much to be followed. If you hike near Craggy Gardens and you hear singing with no visible source, do not investigate. If you find stone circles or arranged backpacks, mark your location and leave immediately. Call authorities from the parking lot. Do not stay in the area after dark. Do not camp off trail. Do not follow sounds that feel designed to attract you. Some mountains have appetites older than the trails we cut through them. Some places want visitors in ways that do not involve safe returns or happy memories. 5 people are still missing. Their families still wait for answers. And the singing still happens, reported every few months by hikers who are lucky enough to resist its call. The mountains are beautiful, but beauty is a tool like any other, and in the right hands or the right ancient intelligence, it is the most effective trap ever designed. I am writing this because I made a promise I intend to keep. My name is McKenna. This is my second story. After what happened at Smoky Hollow, after pulling that woman from beneath my tent and fighting masked figures in the forest, I swore I would not camp in the Appalachians alone again. But grief has no respect for vows, and 1 year after my brother disappeared on these mountains, I found myself back in the wilderness with a tent and a need to be close to the last place he was seen alive. I drove to Balsam Mountain in late October, the highest parts of Great Smoky Mountains National Park, where elevations reach above 6,000 feet and the air gets thin enough that breathing becomes conscious work. The area is remote even by park standards. Balsam Mountain Road is a one-way gravel track that winds along ridge crests and through spruce fir forests that feel more Canadian than southern. The road closes in winter. Few people venture up there even when it is open. It is the kind of place where you can camp for days without seeing another soul. The air was cold enough to see breath. Frost had already killed most of the undergrowth. The trees stood bare except for the evergreens. I picked a site off Balsam Mountain Road near the old fire tower. The tower has not been staffed since the 1960s, when aerial surveillance made ground-based fire spotting obsolete. It stands rusted and empty now, a skeleton of steel and wood rising above the canopy, a monument to a different era of forest management. Some of the stairs have rusted through. The platform at the top sways in strong wind. The Forest Service tells people not to climb it, but the tower is still there, still watching, even if no one watches from it anymore. I set up camp at the base of the tower around 6 p.m. The sun was already dropping toward the western ridges. The temperature was falling fast. I cooked dinner over my camp stove, ate from a tin cup, and watched the light fade from gold to orange to deep purple. As I ate, I saw light at the top of the tower, faint, flickering like a lantern. I stopped eating and watched. The light did not move. It stayed centered on the platform, steady and warm against the darkening sky. I convinced myself It was reflection from my camp stove, light bouncing off metal in some impossible way that my tired brain could not calculate. At 9 p.m., the light appeared again, brighter this time, and I heard footsteps on the metal stairs of the tower. Slow, deliberate climbing. The stairs groaned under weight. Each step produced a distinct metallic ring that echoed across the ridge. I turned off my headlamp and watched. A figure reached the top platform, tall, wearing what looked like a ranger uniform from decades past. Dark pants, light shirt, wide-brimmed hat. He held a lantern, old style, the kind that burns kerosene and produces yellow light through curved glass panels. He set the lantern down on the railing and pulled out a notebook. He appeared to be writing. I called up, "Hello?" My voice carried across the still air. The figure did not respond. He kept writing. I watched for 5 minutes. He wrote, paused, looked out over the forest, wrote again. The movements were methodical, routine, the actions of someone performing a job they had done 1,000 times. I called again, louder. "Hello? Are you okay?" Nothing. He set the notebook down and stood at the railing, hands behind his back, looking out over the darkened forest, watching for fires that would never come. I climbed the tower stairs. They groaned under my weight. Some of the steps flexed more than they should. I held the railing tight and climbed slowly, testing each step before committing my full weight. As I reached the top platform, the figure was gone. The lantern was gone. I was alone on a rusted platform 80 feet above the ground, but the metal was warm. I put my hand on the railing where the figure had been standing. Heat. Not ambient heat. Not the lingering warmth of a sunny day. The heat of recent human contact. Body heat. I backed away and descended carefully. I went back to my tent and zipped it shut. I lay in my sleeping bag with my headlamp on, listening. The wind moved through the spruce trees with a sound like whispers. The tower creaked in the breeze, metal expanding and contracting. At midnight, I heard the footsteps again, climbing, slow and steady, same pace as before, same metallic ring of boots on steps. I looked out through the mesh window of my tent. The figure was ascending. Same uniform, same lantern. He reached the top, lit the lantern, and stood watch. I fell asleep to the sound of footsteps. Up and down, all night. The pattern never varied. Climb to the top, stand watch for an hour, descend, wait, climb again. The actions of someone fulfilling a duty that transcended their physical presence on Earth. I woke at intervals and saw the light on the platform. I heard the footsteps. I checked my watch. The pattern repeated every 90 minutes exactly. Mathematical precision. The routine of someone who had done this job so long it became muscle memory that persisted beyond death. At dawn, I woke to silence. No footsteps, no light. I unzipped my tent and looked up. The platform was empty. The tower looked abandoned and forgotten in the pale morning light. I walked around the base looking for footprints. Nothing. The ground was hard with frost. I found a note tucked under my tent stake, paper yellowed with age, handwriting in pencil, faded but readable. It said, October 12th, 1962, clear skies, no fires. Tell my daughter I kept watch. Tell her I finished my shift. I checked the date on my phone, October 12th, 2024. I looked at the note again. The paper felt real. The graphite on the page was there, tangible, something I could smudge with my finger. But paper does not survive 62 years exposed to weather. Pencil writing fades in sunlight and rain. This note should not exist. But it did, and I was holding it. I researched the tower's history when I got home. I found records in the National Park archives. In October 1962, a fire watcher named Samuel Harding died of a heart attack on duty. He was found slumped at the railing, lantern still burning, notebook in hand. His last entry read, "Clear skies, no fires." He was 58 years old. He had worked fire towers for 22 years across 3 different locations. Balsam Mountain was his final assignment. His daughter had visited every year on the anniversary until she passed in 2019. I found his daughter's obituary, Martha Harding Wilson. She had lived in Asheville. The obituary mentioned that she was predeceased by her father, Samuel Harding, a forest ranger who died while serving the National Park Service. It mentioned that she visited his last duty station every year to honor his memory. The last visit would have been October 12th, 2019, 5 years before I found the note. I went back to Balsam Mountain 3 days later. I needed to finish what the note had started. I climbed the tower in daylight. The stairs felt more stable than they had at night, or maybe I was just less afraid. I reached the top platform. The view was extraordinary. Miles of forest in every direction. Ridge after ridge fading into blue distance. I understood why someone would spend their life watching from this vantage point. I understood the commitment it would take to stand here day after day, scanning for smoke, for the first signs of fire, for any threat to the forest below. I said out loud, "Your daughter knows you kept watch. She knows you finished your shift. She came here every year until she could not come anymore. She never forgot you. She never stopped honoring what you did." The air felt warmer. The wind that had been constant since I arrived stopped. Complete stillness. The metal stairs that had groaned under my weight did not groan. I heard one word, carried on air that was not moving, spoken in a voice I had not heard before but recognized anyway. "Good." The wind resumed. The temperature dropped back to normal. The tower felt empty in a way it had not felt before. Not abandoned, not forgotten, just finished. The watch was complete, the duty fulfilled, the message delivered. I climbed down and packed my gear. I left the note where I had found it, tucked under the tent stake, weighted with a stone. Maybe someone else will find it. Maybe they will understand what I understood. That some promises outlast the body that made them. That some duties transcend death. That some people love their work so much they cannot stop even when their heart stops beating. I have been back to Balsam Mountain twice since then. I have not seen the light. I have not heard the footsteps. The tower stands empty and rusted, creaking in the wind, slowly deteriorating, as all abandoned structures do. But on clear nights, when I camp elsewhere in the Smokies, I sometimes look toward Balsam Mountain and imagine the fire watcher still standing watch. Not because he has to, not because he is trapped, but because someone needed to know that he finished his shift. Someone needed to hear that he kept his promise. And once that message was delivered, once his daughter was told through whatever mysterious channels connect the living and the dead, he was free to rest. If you camp near Balsam Mountain Tower and you see light at the top after dark, you are witnessing a man fulfill his duty. Do not disturb him. Do not climb the tower while he works. Watch from below if you must watch at all. Some promises outlast the body that made them. Some duties are so deeply ingrained that death cannot stop their performance. And some mountains respect loyalty more than they respect the laws that govern the rest of us. The fire watcher is gone now. His watch is complete, but for 62 years, he climbed those stairs every night, lit that lantern, scanned those ridges, and wrote in that notebook. Not because he was trapped, not because he was cursed, but because he made a promise to protect the forest. And some people take their promises seriously enough that even death cannot make them break their word. My brother is still missing. I have accepted that I may never know what happened to him, but I have also learned that the mountains hold more than we can see or measure or understand. They hold promises. They hold duties. They hold the echoes of people who loved these places so much they could not leave even when their bodies failed. And if my brother is out here somewhere, if his love for these mountains was strong enough to keep some part of him here, then I hope he is at peace the way the fire watcher is at peace, not haunting, not trapped, just present, still connected to the places he loved, still part of the forest he could not imagine leaving behind.